Minister Dichter, it's very interesting. We were talking during the break. We see these terror attacks now, the stabbings, car rammings, but suicide bombing, to your mind, remains really one of the most difficult threats to counter. And you know this very well, obviously, heading up Shin Bet during the second Intifada, the wave of suicide bombings against innocent Israeli men, women, and children. Talk about why suicide bombing is so difficult for an intelligence service to combat.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Suicide bombing, you see no tools, no intention. In security life, what you are looking for is to find the man with the tool, a pistol, a gun, a hand grenade, and intention. He's going to use it. He's opening fire, so you can block him, and you are allowed even to open fire in order to kill him. I don't know even one case in suicide bombing that someone opened fire to block a suicide bomber just because you suspected him to be such a suicide bomber. So that's the nightmare of all security and intelligence services. And because the people that are being recruited to carry the bomb inside a bus, inside a mall, inside a restaurant, or with a car bomb, they're not that sophisticated people. They just get trained for a very short time, were recruited at the last days, and were sent, male or female, to carry out their attack.
In terms of the security minister, talk about the role that, we see satellite imagery so much today for intelligence. Talk about the role that good old-fashioned, on-the-ground human intelligence in these dangerous areas plays.
Yeah, over the last years, when people started to carry cell phones and any other devices, electronic devices, computers, and everything today is computerized, everything is digitized, which enables security operations and security apparatuses and intelligence services to be flooded with information from all kind of collecting information they can imagine. So each one of us, you and me, 20 years ago, we barely could talk with someone unless we were at office or at home. Public phone, it was when we were on the way from one place to another. Over the last 20 years, you are sending information whether you talk or not. Each one is carrying a cell phone and a smartphone, and you are a transmitter by definition.
Last question before we go to the break. ISIS and this global phenomenon, this ideology, how has it been a game changer? Has it been a game changer in your mind? Their ideology, they're taking lumps now in the Middle East, they're losing territory, but their ideology, the caliphate, ruthless jihad, how has that galvanized jihadists around the world?
Well, I'm less threatened by ISIS than by Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood are much more extremists. They are sitting on a profound ideology started in 1928.
They're the granddaddy.
And they have spiritual leaders, and they have many millions of supporters, let alone terrorists. ISIS was a very shallow ideology. It started as an Islamic state, then they understood its state has borders, and they want to make sure that the borders will be the Islam borders. So that's why they moved from state to Islamic caliphate. And I think that their end is going to be grosso modo like Carlos the Jackal, if you remember from the 60s and 70s. Yeah. Nobody remembers today who was Carlos the Jackal. He was the nightmare of all security agencies in the world, let alone in Europe. Then came Osama bin Laden. I think that in 10, 20 years from now, if you'll ask people who was Osama bin Laden, they'll ask you, Osama who? Pardon, we don't know the name. I think that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the commander of ISIS, in 20 years he will be a piece of history. I always recommend people, let alone security agencies, to focus on movements like Muslim Brotherhood. They are moving for many years, it's 90 years since established. They have a very profound ideology. Their strategy is very, very extremist, and we have to be very careful about it.
Minister Dichter, very important point about the Muslim Brotherhood, or really all this ideology today comes from. It all comes out of the Brotherhood and Hamas, who we talked about, the self-identified Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, Hamas defines themselves officially in their charter from 1988 as Muslim Brotherhood branch on Palestine.
They are the Ikhwan. Much more with Avi Dichter after the break. We're talking Iran and Hezbollah. You will not want to miss this. It's Kufi, it's The Watchman, only right here on TBN. Stick around.